Folks, we got a red dot. Welcome back to Akron and Northeast Ohio's hottest and fastest growing show, 3 Go. And I'm coming to you live, and I always want to say it right, South Point Tavern, is that right?
Exactly. Yep.
We're at South Point Tavern, and I am here today with Erica. Erica, everyone, Erica.
Hi, nice to meet you all.
All right, so the question I always ask people right off the rip is, tell us your 330 story. Tell us about you.
Okay, well, I am from Youngstown. I'm a Cardinal Mooney graduate. I relocated out here about 16 years ago, family, my daughter, and this is our West Akron location. I live 2 blocks from here, so I am right here in West Akron, and like I said, we have 2 locations. I love this location because of the diversity where we're located, our customers, their likes, and our customers make our place amazing and our awesome staff.
All right, so we saw an article about you in one of the local circular newspapers, and it was about bourbon and about how there's this lady that's local now, and she knows a lot about bourbon, all right? So kind of let's back up and tell us that part of the journey. How did we get there in the first place?
Okay, so 2 years ago, I worked at a place down in Green, had a lot of bourbon. I did not like it, but I was doing bourbon flights and pairings. So I was like, well, I need to learn about it. I need to try it. I tried a lot. I didn't like any of them. And about a year ago, there was a great friend of mine who wanted something new. I had one other thing. So I called a friend and I'm like, hey, if I give you a pour of this, will you trade me something? So she did. And it was, she had Blanton's Black, and it was Midwinter's Night Dram from High West, and that made me fall in love with bourbon. I've always been the sweet martini person, and now I am sweet martini girl or drinking my bourbon neat. And I am a person that goes down the rabbit hole. If I am into something, once I start loving it, I'm going to keep trying it. Obviously, it's alcohol in moderation, but I'm going to keep trying it, and I've just fallen in love with the story of how bourbon is made, we have 350 bottles, and we have 350 very different flavors.
So at some point you said, okay, I want to learn more about this. How did that process go?
So I was here, a customer and a good friend. He is a fellow executive bourbon steward, and a little bit about that is the bourbon steward program is the same as wine, like sommeliers. So in wine, the highest degree is a master sommelier, and in bourbon, it is a executive bourbon steward. I do teach the beginning steward class, so that is something that everybody can come and do, very affordable. So I did the class online, passed my test, and then I was like, well, my friend was like, you know, go down there, you can be an executive. And I was like, oh, well, what's that about? So I researched that, I went down there, and it is something called Stave and Thief Society, and the 18 distilleries that make up the Bourbon Trail have set forth a curriculum about bourbon. So you learn everything about it, what makes a bourbon, what's a whiskey, what's a Kentucky bourbon, and bourbons can come from everywhere in the United States, not just Kentucky. So the program, you go down there, you get to actually take the dry grain, you get to grind it into a powder, you get to cook it and see all the phases. They have fermentation, and then how they actually get the grain off. Then you have your clear distillate, and then it goes into the barrel. It was an amazing program. If you do it in person, you can then become a teaching executive bourbon steward if your establishment is accredited. And South Point Tavern is one of 62 bars in the world that are established and connected to the Bourbon Trail. So
very cool, very cool. Right here in little old West Akron.
Yes.
Good job. All right, so now you go down to Kentucky, and there's always this conversation about bourbon, right? In other words, only bourbons are from Kentucky kind of situation.
Yes.
You are saying that it's not true. But explain to us, what makes Kentucky so special?
So Kentucky has the best there are a few factors down there that make Kentucky ideal for making it. And you know, if there's an ideal condition, like if we're going to New York, we're going to have great snow skiing. If we go down to Florida, we're going to have great beach weather. Kentucky has the best of both worlds for bourbon. I'm going to talk about these two bottles, which is a Van Winkle and a Weller 12, both made by Buffalo Trace. They're both 12 years old, and what happens with the bourbon is it's the same thing. It goes into different barrels, and what goes into it is 4 grains, and that's called the mash bill. It's like the recipe that goes into bourbon. Half of the bourbons here actually have the same mash bill. What makes them different? There's a number of factors, but the biggest thing is the wood, and that's where bourbon gets its flavor. But going back to why Kentucky is ideal and what makes these two bottles that go in the same, I just had an oops. Sorry. I'm so excited. Like, I love talking about bourbon. I get so excited about it, and I kind of get sidetracked. So these two go into the same. It's one big vat. It can go into 100 different barrels. And because the wood is so important, from those 100 barrels, you will get 100 different bourbons.
Okay.
That's why a lot of companies do a small batch. So they will pull together several of those barrels to get a more consistent flavor.
So that's what small batch means.
That's what small batch means.
I knew it was something to do with the taste, right? But you don't, unless you know this educational portion, you're not familiar with that. So,
right.
All right, I'm going to follow you along with
now,
the camera here.
There is no actual. Bourbon is really particular about its rules.
Okay.
As far as where the oak comes from. It has to be American oak. It has to be a charred container. It has to be at least 51% corn. There are all the rules for it to be a bourbon. If it doesn't meet the rules of a bourbon, it's a whiskey.
Okay.
The best analogy I can come up with is all champagne is a wine, but not all wine is champagne. It has to come from Champagne Valley in France. Bourbon is the same. Everything behind me, they are all whiskeys. So that's the big wide category like wine. When you get into the small category like champagne, that's when you get into bourbon.
Okay.
So we were talking about those 100 different barrels. Blanton's has on there, they write it in by hand, what date the batch came out, what barrel it came from, and everything like that. This is a single barrel. So out of those 100 barrels, that one barrel goes into bottles and they all get labeled the same. This is where people start to get kind of picky, and I will say I am the same. People will search for certain dump dates when you really become a bourbon enthusiast, because that wood is so important to the flavor from one batch to another. They can be night and day difference. And people start picking those dates.
I mean, you can taste the difference.
You can taste a difference.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, and then the next question is, so are these barrels reused, or they only used one time?
So to be a bourbon, it has to be a brand new charred American oak container.
Okay.
What a lot of places do, and Angel's Envy is one of them, it has met all of the qualifications to be a bourbon. However, then they finish it in a port barrel.
Okay.
So it's going to soften the flavor. You're going to get a little bit of that port flavor in there. And now it's called a bourbon whiskey. So they can put on the label bourbon because at one point it was bourbon, but they did something else between the barrel and the bottle that made it turn into a whiskey.
You go into a lot of these places like, Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace, and they're selling the smoking wood for wood smokers, and they say that they're from bourbon barrels. Okay.
Right.
So that's what I'm assuming. Once it's used, then they repurpose it.
They
use it for something.
repurpose it for a lot of things. So Rabbit Hole is a great example of it. So they have a gin. It's made like a regular gin, and then it's aged in one of their bourbon barrels. Buffalo Trace uses their Buffalo Trace, E.H. Taylor, Blanton's, Eagle Rare, Stag, all of those great names. Those barrels are highly sought after. They want to keep it in the family, so they send their bourbon barrels down to Mexico where they make their tequila. Tequila can only be made in Mexico. Bourbon can only be made in the United States. But they want to marry them together, and instead of giving their barrel to somebody else, they send it down there, and there are some specialty tequilas that are aged in the bourbon barrels. So they repurpose it. There's also Prisoner wine. There's a great thing with High West. So High West has a whiskey that has been aged in the Prisoner wine barrel, and that has gone through, and they are some of the highest sought after whiskeys. But now they're doing the reverse. So now they are taking that bourbon barrel or whiskey barrel that has aged the bourbon, and now they're aging wine in it. So they're taking a little bit, the wine industry is taking a little bit from the bourbon industry, and right now we are in the bourbon boom. Thank you to COVID. Everyone is at home. What are you going to do? You're going to drink. And that's really what fueled the bourbon boom that we're in right now.
Sure. Well, listen, the next question I would have would be, all right, so how do people experience what you have to offer? In other words, do you offer classes here, or do you guys do tastings and that kind of stuff? How does that all work here?
So we have different nights of the week that we do specials. So Tuesday night we do $8 bourbons cocktails with Old Forester. Every day of the week we do an $11 Buffalo Trace Old Fashioned and a Weller Special Reserve Old Fashioned. Different nights have different things. So tonight is Wednesday. You can come in, $7 off a bottle of wine. Thursday is my night. I'm always working here at our Akron location every Thursday and most Fridays, and then splatter in a few Saturdays. Technically, Thursday is beer night. I will be honest, I work beer night, and maybe I sell 3 beers all night long. It has become our unofficial flight night. So we have 8 pre-selected flights in our menu. And if we want to move over this way really quick, this is a great way. We have these flights every day of the week. Thursday, I always create a special flight, and I talk a little bit about that flight when people order it that day. So Thursday is really special up here at our West Akron location because we do that flight, and I get to tell people a little bit about it. Our flight is all half course, so it is the same as having a Manhattan or a double cocktail or an old fashioned. People think, oh, it's a flight, I can't have that. Well, if you're going to have a double Captain and Coke, you can have a bourbon flight. This is a flight that's under $15. It's called Better Than You Bargained For. Honestly, when someone here buys me a drink, I'm not going to get my $90 pour. This is my go-to, and I believe it's between $6 and $7, and it is fantabulous. But that's an under $15 flight. That is a great way to try something. The other thing that I recommend is we will do a tasting pour. So before you go out and you get an expensive bottle of bourbon, come in here and try it. Get a half pour. It's half price. So this is our starter flight. That's Better Than You Bargained For, which is phenomenal. We have a bonded back in time where they are all bottle and bond. If you order that flight, or I do a bottle and bond flight, you'll have to stop in because I can tell you a little bit about it, and I don't want to give it all away. This is Buffalo Trace's Antique Collection. And this is another great point. How do we get all of our great bourbon? Because Ohio is a controlled state when it comes to liquor, we have one designated liquor store that we have to get our stuff from. So we've gotten this through our appointed liquor store because the state has allocated this to us. So that's how we get the great things like this antique collection, the George T. Stagg, William LaRue Weller, Thomas Handy Sazerac, and the Old Forester birthday bourbon. This is a $200 range flight. It is called the bucket list for a reason, because if you're a bourbon fan, these are sought after. If $200 isn't in your range, do a half pour, try it. It's a great way to go. Our green location, this is a really fun thing. We do have a green location on Massillon Road, and because we have 2 different liquor stores that provide us with our bourbon, each location has stuff that the other one does not have. A lot of your common Old Forester, Russell's, New Riff, Basil Hayden. Both locations will have that, but all of these bottles are not down there. And Green has a Jack Daniel's Sinatra. They have Whistle Pig Boss Hog, things that I would love to have here, but our liquor store has not gotten them in or allocated them to us. So I encourage you to try both locations. That's the bucket list. This next one, and I'm going to grab a bottle back here. All of the bartenders were encouraged to build a flight if they wanted. The best thing that we can do is find out what bourbon you like and build a flight around that. And this was one thing, this is my little fun thing that I did when I was in Kentucky at the school. All bourbon is made from 4 cereal grains: rice, corn, wheat, rye, malted barley. So it's like a recipe. And my head was thinking that there has to be something to find out what people like. So I actually mentioned this to the instructors. Think of Chex Mix. You have the cereal grains, which make up the bourbon. And if someone comes in, I always have Chex Mix here because when they want me to pick something out, I put the Chex Mix out and I have them put it in the order that they eat it. And I am pretty darn good at picking out what bourbon they're going to like based on that.
What?
If it's like, I know, it's crazy. And the instructor down there, he was like, that is absolutely genius. And I'm like, well, I'm happy I could share. And that's part of my bourbon certification is we like to talk, teach, listen. I do some things certain nights. It's kind of like an impromptu. If you follow South Point Tavern Facebook, all of our tastings and events will be on there, but I do a thing called a sit and sip. And what that is it means I'm going to pick a flight that night. It's going to be between $20 and $40, but I actually get to sit down with you. I get to sip them. We talk about them. We talk about your experiences and fun stuff like that. So I really like those type of events. And sometimes people don't know what they like until they try stuff. And that's why we have put some flights together. So you might find this bottle familiar and you like it. We've put these other ones together thinking if you like that one, you're probably going to like these others. This one you can't get every day of the week or once a year in Ohio. But Jefferson Ocean Rye, you can. So we want to, instead of selling you, a Pappy Van Winkle or something like that, which we have, we want to give you something that you can go pick up on the store today and take it home and drink it, and it's going to have similar taste to it. So Chex Mix is the best way to go to find out what you like, but I often get asked what my favorites are, and these are probably my 4 favorites that we have at this location. So this is Erica's Flight. I believe it's around $80. These 3 are harder to find. They're very hard to find. We get them like once a year, so when that bottle is gone, it's gone. This one we have all the time, but that's my flight and that's what I like, but it doesn't mean everyone else is going to like it. It has 2 ryes in it, and they're very mild ryes, and I like people to try this that say, I don't like a rye, because I tell them afterwards, I'm like, did you know those 2 were ryes? They're like, no way. And I'm like, they were. So those are mild ryes. Then we have stuff like this that's a more bold, spicy rye. We are actually doing an Uncle Nearest event January 20th. If you go to our Facebook, there are links for everything to sign up for the classes or tasting events. And that's where I get to have a great time because we have 8 bourbons that we're going to taste that day. 3 are Uncle Nearest, 3 are Jack Daniel's. And if you remember in the beginning, we talked about how the wood imparts the flavor. We are going to try 2 things that look the exact same on the bottle. It says the same thing. It's Jack Daniel's single barrel strength. However, they're different proofs. They came from different barrels, and I'm loving the opportunity for people to be able to see, okay, well, those have the exact same label. They should be the same, but they're going to taste drastically different. And when we do our events, tasting bourbon, stuff like that, I really like people to learn something. I like them to try something they haven't had before. So we will do some different events and tastings with that. Usually there's like a small food portion. The next class that I'm super excited about, and all of you should be, thinking Valentine's Day the weekend before, it is a bourbon and chocolate event. And I am going down to Kentucky. I go down about once a month, visit the distilleries, and every single time I go down there, I learn something new, whether it's from a tour guide or another bourbon enthusiast. And that's why I keep going down there, is to learn new things, and then I can come back and teach those new things and share them. And that's really why I get enthusiastic about bourbon. I mean, not just enthusiastic, like I get super excited to talk about it.
So all these events that you guys are going to be doing here, where will we find that information? Is it just on your Facebook page, or do you guys have a website as well?
It's going to be on our South Point Tavern Facebook page. The header on our Facebook page, it has like our Buffalo Trace Old Fashioned. That way you'll know you're at the right one. We do have 2 like sub Facebook accounts for the different locations. So when you come to a location, you can check in based on the address, but we do run everything under the one general. The thing that I highly recommend doing is I will post our next tasting, the next 2. There's a link on there that will take you directly to Eventbrite to pay for the event. That's how you secure your seat for the event. But I recommend that you follow us on Facebook and follow our Eventbrite, so the moment that I post a new class or tasting, you will get notified.
And just so everybody knows, this is not a food location, okay?
Correct.
But
we do not serve food at all. We have pretzels. We even have in our menu, we highly recommend that people bring things in. So people will bring in pizza all the time.
Okay.
They will DoorDash Taco Bell. They'll bring in their own little charcuterie plate. We highly encourage that. In the plaza, we have Nico's Sandwich Board. They're open till 7. So we have their menu. We try to send people that way. But the bourbon and chocolate, I'm making an excuse to go down. I have to go down and pick up the chocolate for the tasting. That's my excuse. But the chocolates are amazing, and I've never thought to put bourbon with chocolate. But there is a specific bourbon for a specific bottle. Not their whole Weller brand, but for that specific bottle. Angel's Envy is one of them that we're doing on the tasting, and they have this amazing milk chocolate orange Shamir. Fabulous. I'm not going to tell you the others, but I am going down there, and I'm excited to pick those up, and maybe I'll fit in like 10 tours while I'm down there, hoping to learn something new and bring something else back to share with everyone.
all right, well, listen, this has been wonderful, and we learned a lot more from talking with you in 20 minutes than reading a newspaper article about it, right? And so, yeah, a wealth of information, wealth of experience, wealth of knowledge, and it's all available right here for everybody at South Point Tavern right here in West Akron. And again, this is Erica, and again, we'll help kind of promote and promote their events throughout the year now that we have a little relationship with you guys. All right, but thank you so much for being on and sharing your thoughts with us. That's all I've got.
Can I say
You can.
two quick things?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
Our staff here at both locations is absolutely amazing. Our bartenders, barbacks, they are what makes this place amazing. And I want to thank all of my fellow bartenders. There are 6 of us, and I feel, and a lot of people in the community feel, you will not find better service at a bar in this town than when you come here. And the thing that I love most next about that is all of our customers. So everyone who has come in or will come in, thank you so much for patroning us, giving us jobs, and this great, amazing place to come to. I can't thank all of you enough, and the owner for this great place that he's built for all of us to work at.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for letting us in, and we wish you the best of luck. Have a good 2024. All right, folks, that's all I got for now. I'm going to call it a day, and we're heading back into NFL Browns playoff football coverage. That's all I got. Take care, folks. Have a good night, everybody. And everybody out there, say good night, Shirley.